Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. My name is Carlos Perez. I'm going to be doing a presentation today on operating the shadows and just practically how to use an interpreter when you're doing a penetration test and leave the less amount of footprint or artifacts in the system that you're trying to penetrate. And this is the analogy of how I want to express the way that we operate in shadows. We can still see that guy. That guy can still be seen. As he moves, he can still be detected. I don't know how many here has seen in History Channel the competition Top Sniper. And when you look at those guys doing this talk, many times you are going like, oh, we can see him. He's not doing correctly. But half his body is above the grass. Same thing is happening with penetration testers many times when they're believe that they're being covert, or they believe they're not being detected. A bit about me, I do this podcast with a bunch of guys called Paul.com. They drink beer. I'm the only one not drinking in the entire group. I'm also a Metasploit community developer. If any of you has used an interpreter script, chances are I wrote that script. I think I've written out of the almost 50, almost 48 of those. And there's a bunch more that I have not made public yet. And in fact, there are 2 that I even wrote this morning for this presentation. My day job is as a solution architect for a large IT company. I worked mainly this last year designing large data centers, working with developing and creating cloud providers, designing the infrastructure, dealing with the virtualization of those networks, dealing with the network side, security side, processes, how to manage those large environments and how to keep them secure. In addition to that, my main area of research is post-exploitation, which is what you do once you get in. In fact, if you go into my website, darkoperator.com, you will see that my tagline is, shell is only the beginning. That's where the fun starts. And I'm also a tactical geek, as you will see from my slides. I have a military background and a tactical background. General notes, in this presentation I'm only going to be covering the x64 and x32 versions of the interpreter. I know there are new versions that have been coming out, like the PHP, Java versions, and there's right now the POSIX version of interpreter. The reason I'm going to focus on the Windows side is because Windows is the most popular target, and those versions do not have full interpreter API support yet, and they're in development. Why an interpreter? Well, it runs in memory. It's not touching the disk in any way, form, or matter. Well, it is just there sitting idle on the system. When you disconnect from interpreter, you migrate from one process to another process, it will actually do, after DEFCON 17, H.D. Moore saw several presentations where interpreter was being detected in the system after compromise or after a penetration test, and he decided to add memory scrubbing to the interpreters so as to make it more difficult to find out what the interpreter did from a memory image. Interpreter uses a lot in Windows API. That is one of its biggest advantages. Sadly, it is not very well exploited by many users. It has several options. You can use HTTPS, you can use TCP and UDP, mainly the different payloads of interpreter to communicate back to your client. That means that it's very flexible in terms of communication and its footprint in the network. In addition, all traffic is encrypted. Sadly, it uses SSL and it's using self-generated keys, so it can be man in the middle. There's a bit of warning there. It can be automated and extended very easily, as you will see. And for many of you who have asked why operating in the shadows, well, many times when I've been in projects or talking with other friends that work in penetration tests, one of the things that we've seen is client personnel egos. As soon as you tell them you're doing a pen test, all of a sudden they're checking their logs. All of a sudden they're putting patches on the boxes. And many times even the SIMs, when you see it, the System Information Management for Security Events, it has never been touched. They haven't logged in a month or 2 months, and all of a sudden the manager says, we probably are going to get pen tested next week, you'll see them logging every morning and checking the logs every morning, after lunch, and before they go back to work, back to their houses. So we got to deal a lot with the personal egos of people working there while doing a penetration test. Also, many companies want to test their incident response. They're going like, well, we haven't had an incident in X amount of months. We don't know if our guys are actually on the ball, keeping up to date, we know how to do stuff. And many times you may be hired just to do internal penetration tests where you're given access to some of the systems, and then they'll ask their guys, kind of a training exercise, especially in very big companies where they go, okay, we want to test how well we're doing, how well, where are our areas of improvement, where do we need to train our personnel in, let's say, Windows forensics, Linux forensics, which areas do they need more training on. Another area is because we're supposed to mimic a real attack. A real hacker will not do lots of noise. In fact, the way they operate, and I've seen them operating, is that they want to leave as least evidence as possible of what they're doing, so you will not be able to close their back doors or close what they're doing. In fact, one of the best areas for you to learn about post-exploitation is just go into the different websites that do analysis of malware and read how that malware is behaving. Where is it writing files? How is it reading the registry keys? How is it operating completely inside memory? And how does it hide itself? We're going to start with the local exchange principle. The local exchange principle is which each contact between two items, there will be an exchange. The two items are yourself going into that system, and the other item is that system. There will always be an exchange. Right now, me being here, I'm exchanging saliva, I'm exchanging cell skins. Same thing that applies to criminal forensics in different in real life for murders and stuff like that applies into the digital world. Another thing is, one thing to remember, even though we take every action, every precaution to not leave us any traces on those systems, you will always leave an artifact somewhere in the network. In other words, your ISP, due to federal mandates, giving blocks of where you're connecting, what IPs are you connecting from. The ISP has that information. Many firewall logs, even though they're not looking at them, will have your information of when you connected in there. Probably not your target's firewall or your target's router, but somewhere in the network, through the one you traverse through, there's going to be a log somewhere probably that's going to say when you connected. Even your own system will keep that information for you. So many times when you ask forensics guys, they're being called to find out what somebody did with their machine. So your machine will hold a lot of that information also. The first step is planning. You've got to plan for your pen test. How do we plan for our pen test? We got to have a clear target list. What are those goals that we want to achieve in our client's environment? Am I going after financial data? Am I going after trade secrets? What am I going after in that system? Because that's going to determine how am I going to behave once I'm inside that box. And the thing is, when do we get most of this information? Before the engagement with our client. We interview our client, we're talking with them. One thing we can do is we can get the business data, the technical data, but we gotta also do proper enumeration of our client while we're visiting during those pre-engagement meetings. Just by walking down, I really find it funny. I don't know if it happens here in the States, but in the area that I cover, Central American, Caribbean, I see a lot of companies putting all of their data centers behind glass walls and in a place that everybody can see the data center. It's kind of a family jewel, something they want to show. They want to go, everybody look at my data center, look at all the beautiful blink lights. And when you go in there, you stand in there, you can go, okay, they have a fixed firewall. Oh, cool. They're using tipping point, IPSs. Oh, that box over there, even though it's a client server, has logo from source fire, and you can start getting an idea what the client environment is. In fact, just by looking at those beautiful blinky lights in the switches, you can tell if their network is segmented or not. If all of them go boom, on, off, one single network, that means bad network design. But if you start seeing different patterns and you see those patterns being organized, that means that they're very organized, they are documenting, they know what they're doing. That brings the whole game level a bit up. Another thing is when you're talking with your client, ask them questions like, okay, so are we going to involve your incident response team during the penetration test? If they say no, perfect. If they say no, we want to keep them out of the loop to test them, then you know that an incident response team exists. You can ask questions of when you're preparing for the penetration test and you're preparing the list of responsible people and names to call. In the case or event that you bring down a server, you already got information. Who are they? How many of them are they? Who are those opponents and targets that you might even do social engineering attack using the set tool? From that, you're going to prepare an initial plan of attack. How am I going to engage this network? One of the things I like to do, and I don't know if the networking guys are up to speed, is I like to just go and not use Hydra or use Medusa or anything like that to perform a Cisco router. I just want to know if SSH is there or Telnet. I just go in, put my name in or a name, enter, and just enter a fake password and see what do I get back. If I see a banner and I see that it took more time than usual to give me some information, I already know that they're doing hardening on that equipment. I already know that if they took the time to do hardening, it means that they took the time also to log information out of that equipment. You know, it's just the small things that you notice that will make a real difference while you're doing that initial enumeration while you're in your client's environment. And remember, you got to be flexible. Your initial plan, you're going to have to change it. Once you get in, your plan cannot be written in stone. You have to change and adapt to your client's environment, what information you're getting. I know that many clients will go, I only have enough money for 2 weeks. But that doesn't mean you're going to do a crappy job. That means that you're going to take the extra time probably and look for that specific information that you're going to need to, those critical factors that may change your plan first before anything else. So, once you're inside, one of the things I highly recommend is enumerate host configuration. Enumerate your host data. What data is there? Right now, Interpreter has actions for searching inside a box without touching whatsoever any command line on that box or touching any executable or modifying any of the access times and files and stuff like that. Change plan in it if anything looks out of place. That plan has to be modified. So let's start by knowing our enemy. Our enemy, we're going to call our enemy the incident response team, or the administrator that has some incident response training. You will notice that the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to go for the low-hanging fruit. Many times they're going to be called for engagement. The first thing they're going to check is, well, what are the processes that are running in this box? When was that process started? What is the command line of that process? Where is that process started from? Because if I all of a sudden see Notepad running from the attempt directory, that's a flag for me. If all of a sudden I see Notepad running in the process list, but I don't see Notepad in my screen, that's a big telltale that something's happening funny in my system. Another thing that they'll do is they'll check registry keys. Imaging tends to be the last thing they do because many times they have to bring down those systems, and they cannot cry wolf every time they think they're hacked. So you will see that imaging is something that many times will not come into play. But dumping memory with the new tools that are out there, you'll see that a lot. They'll dump the memory of that system if they believe the system is compromised. Not all companies have incident response team. In fact, many companies, I would say 80% of those that I've gone through have a jack of all trades. The same guy that administers the servers, the same guy that does security, it's the same guy that does IPS, and it's the same guy that does incident response. There's a saying I remember Back in '95 in Fort Benning, I saw a sign what was there that says that were Murphy's Laws of Combat. And one of them says, professionals are predictable, where the world is full of amateurs. So that means that we can predict if our guys are trained or not. We can predict what they're going to look for, what they're going to do. Just to recapitulate, to go again, what I said, when they check their process list, they're going to check time of creation, parent id, the owner, and the command line. You're going to check what's happening in that box, what conditions are there present. And when they start looking at the connections, they're going to check why is Notepad connecting to the internet. Many times you will see demos of Metasploit. Well, they go into Interpreter, and the first thing they do is they use the migrate tool and the migrate Interpreter script, and what we'll do is we'll bring in Notepad and migrate to Notepad. And many times you will see them wrongfully, by default, go into LSAS. And then they exit that process and they bring down the server. Many times a lot of people do not know how to use the tools, and they don't know how to hide themselves. Believe it or not, I was doing an assessment after a penetration team went in. I did find that they were using the lead port number for their shells. Made it quite easily for me to find the shells just because they found it funny to use it. And believe it or not, you'll also see a lot of script kiddies doing the same with the port 4444, the default for Metasploit. The only thing you got to do is you got to go into your shell, and here you can see my sessions, and you'll be able to see 5 sessions there: the Windows 2008, R2, 64-bit, Windows 7, 64-bit, Windows 2003 box, and you'll be able to see the port that is 444, the default port that Metasploit tends to connect to. So next thing we got to do is understand our operation. Let's learn a bit about Windows. Not all versions of Windows are the same. They operate differently. And this is one of my biggest pain points. A lot of people are trained to penetrate, operate inside Windows XP. Many young pen testers or junior pen testers, when I see them, they only know how to hack Windows XP. Because that's what they have in their box, that's what the PC they have at home, and that's what they train for. In fact, one of the things you're going to notice is that not all versions of Windows record the same type of data. They do not log, they have the same logging level as others. In fact, not all versions of Windows record that data in the same format, even though it is the same items. Let's start with the event log. The event log is saved in binary format in Windows 2000, 2003, and XP. On Windows Vista, Windows 7, and Windows 2008, you will notice that it's still binary, but the text and everything inside it is in XML format. They changed that. Not only did they change that, but they also changed the IDs. The IDs are no longer the same. So when we're going in, one of the best areas for us to enumerate is getting information out of those event logs. Another thing you'll notice is that you can query that information directly out of the registry. One of the things I like about the registry is that it will not save the last access time. You can read whatever you want from the registry, and you're not leaving any footprints in that box. You will see there the key where all that information is written. In fact, I wrote a small script this morning for enumerating the registry. Let's go into one of the sessions. Let's go on number 5. For I. Number 5. An event, small script called Event Manager. One of the things I can do with Event Manager is I can clear event logs. I can open an event log and query that event log. I can filter for event IDs and that event log. I can get information on what event logs are present in the system and their configuration. and I can log the data of those event logs into a CSV file that I can then query. And the way I wrote this tool is it will operate completely from memory. I'm not executing any commands locally in that box. So let's check what we can do there. Let's get some information from that event log. Here you can see that I have, I can access the application, security, and system. I can see the retention is disabled, maximum size, amount of records. This will give me an idea. If I see retention, that means that they're doing hardening on that box. That would automatically give me an idea of what's happening there. Let's say I want to query one of those event logs. Let's query the security one. And I'm going to filter for the event, I believe it was, let's go 538. 538 in which 2003 is log off. I can just start seeing that they're logging log on and log off events. Another thing I can see is who's logging on, who's logging off, out of what computer. So I'm already enumerating data, getting information without touching the system hard drive or running commands on that machine. You will notice that at the end, when it finishes, it will save all that data automatically into a log file, a CSV file. I can later open in Excel and just look through it. In fact, one of the things you may do is just dump the entire security event log and start going through it. What is being logged on that machine? That will tell you an idea of what they're looking for, what they're seeing. To give you an idea of the script itself. I wrote it this morning. Sadly, my daughter was sick for 6 days and I couldn't write the code for this event. I had to write it this morning. Here you can see that some of the stuff I'm doing is just checking which version of OS it is. Depending on the version, you will see the registry keys changes. This is what I'm saying. Windows, different versions, they save data in different formats, different ways. You can see here that I'm getting all the information on the retention. Using the registry to get valid data, interpreter mixin. You will see here, open that event log. If it fails to open, that means I have access denied, that means I don't have access. I'll save all that information to a table and then show that table out. When I'm creating the events here, you can see I'm setting all that info, retrieving the event ID, when was it generated. I'm getting the status, my printed status here of the info here. I'm saving just the data of that event. All of that information can be created. One of the web pages are highly recommend that you go to, and it's going to be in my presentation notes. For here is this website, theultimatewindowssecurity.com. They do have a comprehensive list of the most common event IDs. This is a treasure trove of information of how my target is being configured, how is it operating, and will also give me information, believe it or not, on computers in that network. A good friend of mine called Tim Mudding, he wrote a PowerShell script that will actually go out there in the network if you give it proper credentials. It will create the security event log and will get you a list of usernames out of the entire network, out of the event log. And it will also, if you give it another switch, it will give you a list of computers in the network. In any way, form, or matter, have I sent a ping packet or a port scan to find out information out there in the network, or I've done a null session or something that probably could be triggered by an IPS. Another thing I can do is I can clear the event log. You will see that if I don't give it any event log, it will clear them all. If not, it will clear only that one I tell it to clear. One of the things you'll notice is on Windows 7 and Windows 2008, I think the event log is 5811 when you clear the event log, and it's 504 in Windows 2003, I believe. We can just check here. Here we can see it, 517. One thing you will notice is that in Windows 2003 XP and 2000, if I clear a security event log, there's going to be a clear event. But if I clear application or I clear system, nothing gets logged. In other words, if I start playing with services, I bring some services down and up, and I decide to clear that event log, nothing is being logged. When I clear that in Windows 2000, Windows XP, and Windows 2003. But if I do the same on a Windows Vista 7 or 2008, it gets logged by default. If I clear any event log, it will get cleared. Another thing is that through the event log and getting that list, I'm going to be able to know also what that machine is doing. Let's say, let me go send this session to background. Let me move to the 2008 box. No, this is Windows 7. Let me check this in case. You will see to what I have access to and what I do not have access to. From this, I can already tell if I see Media Center, this means that this box is not an enterprise version of Windows. Yes?
Question for you. Does Ruby have good libraries for interfacing with the Windows event logs?
The Win32 libraries. You can download those and install them and play with those. I haven't played with them. I know a lot of people use them. But I practically live in Interpreter, and everything I do in Ruby is inside Interpreter. I know that Python, the Win32 Python library, works great. That one I have used console and it's very stable. In fact, my incident response tools that I use in my day job, I wrote all of those in Python using that API, and then I compiled those into executables. Another thing I can see here also is there's no key management service information. That means that they're not using PKI. Another thing I can see here is PowerShell. That means that this machine has PowerShell. I can use PowerShell tools. In fact, Dave Kennedy, who's going to present later tonight, wrote a very nice interpreter script that will dump patches out of a box using PowerShell. And I do not know of any incident response team out there that actually look at PowerShell events during a compromise. Another thing we're going to see, in Windows 7 and Windows 2008, also in Windows Vista, you can configure them to send event information outside of their box to another box. That other box becomes a subscriber. This is done to Windows Remote Management. I haven't seen one single client use Windows Remote Management without certificates. It uses SSL. They do a quick config. They're sending all of that information to the network with self-generated SSL certificates. If you look at the services in the target box, the only service that you have to look for, and check if it is run, this service right here, and you will know if that service is collecting event logs for other servers. So when you query that event log in that box, you're also getting event logs from other boxes and additional information during your enumeration. If you have shell, you can use the WVC util, and you can just do enum subscriptions or get configurations. If I just do WVC util ES, I'll enumerate the subscriptions. If I do WVC util GS, I'm going to be able to get the configuration on if there are subscriptions or not on that box. As I said, the event log is a treasure trove of information. One thing you will notice is, even though I was running as administrator on that box, and my account was administrative account Windows 7, was not able to clear or access the event log for Windows Internet Explorer or the security event log. I had to, because that box has UAC enabled. Here again, you can see if you want to play with the event log API call, you can do it through IRB. This is the command that you can use to play with it. In fact, you can do client.sys.eventlog.methods, and you can see different methods that you can invoke that command if you want to play with it in IRB. I will make public this script. Probably tonight I'll push it into the SVN. If you clear the event log, it will be very noisy, but many times we have to do it. Sometimes we have to do that to clear our tracks. One thing to keep in mind is, before you do this, make sure that your rules of engagement with your client permit it. Not all clients are very happy when you do that. Information that we can gather from event logs just by enumerating our target. We can get a scheduled task, creation of account, stop of service, start of service, log on, log off, failure to log on, users added to groups, users removed from groups, change user account. So that's the main information that incident response people will take a look at, and it's also this information that you can take a look at. Also get information on that box and check if that is being logged. In other words, if you create an account on that target system and you saw that you were being sneaky by calling a support underscore any number, you're not. They can just go into event log and just see it there when you create it. So when they're creating what they call the timeline, and they're trying to see what events happen during which time period, they're going to be able to deduce that very quickly. Already showed you guys this script. The next target is the Windows registry. This is a gold mine. In fact, if you check most of my scripts, in one way or another, they're written from the registry. I'm accessing that registry and getting tons and tons and tons of information out of the registry. I can get operating system settings, I can get group policy settings, I can get application settings. Free access is available almost throughout the entire registry for the accession of the SAM account and the security hive. One of the things that you will notice is that when you're operating in Windows 7, Windows 2008 R2, even though you're an administrator and UAC is enabled, you will not be able to modify or touch the HT local machine hive. But you can do whatever you want to the HT or user hive. Again, different ways that the operating system operates. Registry can be configured to log and access to it and notifications. ACLs can be placed on registry keys. Sadly, this is done very rarely. In fact, very few of my clients actually use the recommended best practices from Microsoft, even though they give an INF file that has all of that info. Therefore, to configure. Metadata is saved only for write and creation time, not access time. So I can read all I want from that registry, nothing's getting logged. As soon as I modify a value or delete a value, that information is going to be saved. Also, I can get out of the registry the last value that was deleted. It is kept inside the registry file. So if I delete or modify something, and insert response guide uses F response, NCase, one of the queries that those tools have, even the free version, free open source tools like Rec, Slack, are going to be able to find those deleted values, and they're going to notice that. So do be careful and keep it in mind that the target you're attacking is a very sophisticated target, and they do know their stuff. API calls that you can use to read the registry are registry underscore and vals, registry underscore and keys, get val data, get val info. I can do a services underscore list. In fact, I'm getting all that information out of the registry. I can get a service underscore info. I'll get that information out of the service again. This is the new interpreter mixing. This was written specifically to simplify automation in interpreters. So in case you want to write scripts, this is the calls that you may want to use, because if you don't use those calls, this should give you an example of how I used to do it before. This is the RDoc for that. And if I go into, let's say, registry, and I want to enumerate a key, that's all the code I have to write, just to enumerate one single key. So in other words, what we're doing is simplifying the way you can access the registry and interoperate with it. I'm going to put in my webpage this documentation on the new interpreter mixin. You can use this to write your own interpreter scripts. You'll find it very useful. And here are those calls that you can use to modify the registry. In fact, you can set values, delete keys, delete value, create keys. Those will be logged. Also, when you create a service, that will also be logged in the system. You can create services. And if you change the service startup, it will also be logged. One of the best resources you can have when you're writing interpreter scripts that are going to be from the registry are these, the downloading of these files that you see here from that link. You will download all these root policy settings and configuration settings from Windows 2003, 2008, 2008 R2, Windows 7, Vista. All of those group policy settings, everything is there in an Excel spreadsheet with all the keys and what that key represents to. So in other words, there's a treasure trove of information that you can use also that, for writing interpreter scripts, for enumeration, or writing your PowerShell scripts to automate any way you want, configuring a system, hardening it, or just enumerating. There's this thing called Windows Prefetch that I've seen a lot of incident response teams use. You save a list of everything that you execute in that box gets saved. So when it's booting up, it's going to prefetch all that information to memory. It'll make it faster for you to interact with that box. It's only enabled by default on XP, Vista, and Windows 7 on client machines. All the information is written to the Windows directory, the prefetch folder, and only an administrator, somebody with admin level, can delete those files. So in other words, if you run WinInum, all of those commands are saved there. If you run, let's say, the persistence script, that will be saved there because you're running CS script. Anything that you do that will create a file or put a file in that system, you execute it, it will be saved there. Target Windows system. Many times I've seen penetration testers go in. I do all my stuff. I delete the event log for security. I delete all the event logs. I think I'm stop free. Heck, let me bring up timestamp and stomp all the dates of all the files. They're not going to know what I ran. Well, if you go here to prefetch, I'm going to be able to see all of those files. And not only when I'm going to be able to see those files, I'm going to get a hash of that file. In addition to the hash, I'm also going to know how many times that file was executed. And when was the last time it was executed? And many times they'll say, okay, then I'm going to go the GUI version. I'm going to do RDP. I'm going to use VNC. Well, there's another key in Windows, not very well documented, called user assist. And the HP current user, software, Microsoft, blah, 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 Explorer, user assist. Each key represents an execution of a shortcut file or any executable you executed through the GUI, be it RDP or local in that box. I've gone into clients where we've seen 400, 500, 600 entries under this key, and all of them are, since the box was installed, you can see everything that was done in that box through the GUI throughout all of those years. Funny thing is that it was encrypted. Each key name has the name of the file or executable trigger. It's encrypted ROT13. Very easily decrypted. One of the strange things, since Microsoft did not document this key, is that not everything's logged there. You'll see the key name is ROT13, and then you will see a binary value. Inside the binary value, I'll be able to extract from it how many times was it executed and what was the last time it was executed. I'm planning on writing a script to simplify parsing that. When we go into the file system, you'll notice that Windows 2000 XP and 2003 do save the access time by default. So anything I touch in that disk is going to be recorded in the maze, in the access time of that file. Windows Vista 7 2008, it was disabled by default according to Microsoft for performance reasons. So I can execute all the executables I want in a Windows 2008 server, and since 2008 doesn't do prefetch, it will not save flash access time. It's not logged anywhere. Here you can see how knowing how each operating system operates, how you should operate inside that operating system.
You know any good tables out there that list this particular feature, this particular version of Windows, and has like a check mark so you know which ones apply to which?
I think I'm going to do that from a web page.
Yeah, I'm doing some related stuff, and it's hard to keep it all in your head.
Yeah, I know. In fact, this comes from many years doing penetration tests and focusing on post-exploitation. These are lessons from the field, notes from the field, as I call them. Stuff I find out as I work doing post-exploitation. But I should create a table. That would be a good resource. One of the things you'll notice is that Windows added Bulk Child Services. Bulk Child Services is nothing more than will create a snapshot of a file when you modify it. So you can revert back. If you have Windows 7, it is enabled by default. If you have Windows Vista, it's enabled by default. On Windows 2008, also it's enabled by default. If I go into Windows 2003, it is not. All the same for XP. Even though you scrub a directory using cipher.exe, that I can scrub a directory, bless you, it will snapshot that data and save it before it runs the scrub. Even though I'm scrubbing that data because I don't want it to be recovered in any way, form, or matter, it will save that. It will do snapshot and save the snapshot involving child services in Windows. So many times when a hacker goes in and he dumps all of his tools and then he goes, I'm going to be smart, I'm going to delete them from disk. Deleted them, okay, let me use cipher.exe, run against that folder, that temp folder, so it will scrub all that Slack data out of the disk. Okay, now we won't be able to find out what file I placed there in that box. They can go into Bulk Child Services and just recover those deleted files, even though you scrub that. In fact, Interpreter has an option called timestamp. And timestamp will actually let you change the last access time of the file. One of the problems it has is that it's using Windows API and it's only modifying the standard info when you do that and you modify that file. So if the inserted font team is able to do an image of the hard drive, they can read it off the MFT and they can read what's the last access time for that file. Some folders and file types are excluded. I'm planning on writing an interpreter script that will show you which folders are those. In fact, you can find those under HD local machine system, current control set, control, backup restore, files not snapshotted. In fact, one of the things I'm going to do is when I publish this presentation, you will see here in the notes, you'll find a lot of information, special notes of where you can find more information when I create the PDF.
Can you add things to that list?
Yes, if you're administrator or system, yes you can. So let's go into how to operate. Well, if we're executing commands, Secure Interpreter, they're going to get logged. So one of the things I recommend mostly is know your scripts. Many of the scripts, when you open them, you will see that they're actually executing Windows binaries or Windows commands in that box. Many of them will even upload and download data. That data can be retrieved and can be found. The WMIC, WinEnum do this. In fact, I'm going to write a stealth version of WinEnum. If an OS has prefetch enabled, also check BSS before deleting and scrubbing. If it does have BSS, you can disable BSS with a tool inside the system called BSS admin. You can actually disable it, and you can then delete that folder, scrub that folder, and just re-enable BSS back. You won't be able to recover the data. If GUI is used, do not forget about user assist. That's going to be there. You're going to VNC or going through RDP. That's going to be saved. Do you know your environment, know your prefs? Are you running as administrator or not? There's a function in interpreter mixing called isadmin that will let you know. Another thing that you can notice is that when you're in running interpreter and you do sessions, you will be told if you're admin or not in that box. If you're in a Windows 7, Windows 2008 box, and UAC is enabled, and you're running without the highest privileges, you will see that you will not have this, as this account here happens to have. It's running as a regular user, even though the account is administrator in that box. But when I executed again that command, without UAC, you can see here that that same account is admin. Check what is running in that box. You have PS, check those executables. You will see if they have ifs, AB. Check one of the scripts, which is the get the program list. That will tell if they're using internal tools. There's a big giveaway that they know their stuff. Many times you'll see several tools that will let you know whether they're ran on that box, if they're running them from a USB stick or not. Do they have what kind of tool set they're using also. Check what is being logged, check the event log, check golden child services, check last access assignments log. That can be checked using FSVTL or drive registry key. I did copy that in the notes from the presentation. When you're clearing your tracks, there was the slides here. Another thing is when you're executing using Cognito, you can, if your system, all of a sudden I see system run cmd.x, I'm going to ask myself why. If I see system running Notepad or running whatever other program because I want to inject observer into that process, I want to know why. The system's not supposed to be running that. So if you want to run certain programs on your certain accounts, you can use Incognito, or you can steal the token. One technique I have seen that works perfectly is streaming executables. You do an ADS stream, you stream that executable in the NTFS file system under another file and you execute it. It will look as if the file you streamed it under is the one that is running, not your tool. So I can put netcat under Notepad. I execute netcat and it's going to look as Notepad is the one running, not netcat. And in the prefetch folder it will also be saved that way. But ADS can be, if they do an image, can be easily detected. Use Railgun, if possible, instead of Windows executables. If you know C++ very well and you know the Windows 32 API, you can extend it with Railgun. Railgun means that you can part of those DLLs and use their functions. Hide your connections in your system. If you're going to be connecting back to your box, try to migrate under SVC host. SVC host has a bunch of numbers of connections always running. It manages all the services, so it's easier to hide there. If you're going to run it in a desktop system, do use Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, Antivirus, Dropbox, any number of applications do connect to port 80 and 443. Try to use those in that box. Do not go, let's say, for no reason whatsoever, it is supposed for Internet Explorer to be talking on port 4444. Use IPv6. Most monitoring systems do not check for IPv6 traffic. Most firewalls do not check for a Toronto tunnel. And if you also the Windows firewall does not block or filter IPv6 traffic by default. Also, know where to take it down. In other words, know where to write your files. Where I'm going to write those files to. You can check the registry key for VSS what files not to snapshot to folders. You can place files there if VSS is enabled. If UAC is enabled, go into the temp folder, put your files there. Do you use environment variables when you're putting your files in and decide when to put them in? Some admins are very smart and they decide to go to security and just go, I'm going to change drive C and I'm going to install everything in drive D. And they change the drive letters, and if you hard code that into your script, that will fail. Be careful when you write anything to disk, because AV will check it. AV is always monitoring all disk writes. And if you're writing a VBS script or a executable, it's going to get automatically seen by the AV and it's going to check it. If you did not do any encoding, it's going to be detected. But one of the tools that I wrote this morning that I think you guys are going to like, I wrote specifically for this event, is interpreter inject. I wrote this in about half an hour. Haven't had a chance to test it too much. I only tested in Windows 7, 2008, and Windows 2003. Haven't tested in XP and haven't tested in different service pack levels. What it actually will do is that you can give it a PID or a name of a process, and instead of using persistence that has to write a file to the file system and it has to modify the registry, you can use this script to actually go and inject that payload into memory to that process and give you a secondary connection back to that box. So let me hope that the demo gods are nice to me today. Let me show you how it runs. Let me choose one box here. Section 5. Let's go to that one. Just let's do sys info. Windows 2003 server. Let's do a PS. And here I have several services. We do I'm under PID 424. Let me choose one. Let's choose 3248. I'm not operating check. MSH will give me all the options. MSP, I can do the PID 3248. I can, since I'm already have a listener on this box, I'll give it the port. MSP 444. Remote host. This box, this box here is this one, 192, 168, 17. With that one, and I'm going to cross my fingers and see if it works. Oops. Yeah, left PH there. Yep. There's my second session. And in no way, form, or matter did I touch the registry or did I touch the file system. Everything was done in memory. And I'm not at work. I wrote that in 30 minutes. A bit nervous there. Well, guys, sorry for not having more scripts to show you. Sadly, I spent 6 days with my daughter in the hospital and couldn't provide them for the presentation. I hope you liked it. I do have to give special thanks to my wife, our little girl, for putting up with me while we were in the hospital, me preparing the presentation and adding stuff for the research for the presentation here. Special thanks for H.D. Moore from Metasploit Escape, the original author of Interpreter. Stephen Fewer, who is the new Escape, is the one adding all of the new cool features. And Patrick, HVE, he's the creator of Railgun. You, the users, for all the ideas and feedback. In fact, I even got an idea from Rob to create what he calls shotgun injection for Interpreter, making sure that it will connect to different targets posts back that Interpreter session. The Metasploit team, anybody have missed, and to my mentor instructor, Cecilio Andrade, who has been my technical advisor in many stuff in life. He's a Spaniard Legionnaire, served in Bosnia, Afghanistan, Iraq. Has a bunch of confirmed kills under his name. A real world shadow operator, and a very good friend and the godfather of my daughter, so I pity the guy that falls in love with her. So I hope you guys liked it. Any questions? Yes?
With Shadow Copy, if you disable System Restore, is Shadow Copy still running in the background,
Yes.
backing up other things?
Yes. In fact, System Restore, the way it works is on Windows XP, it is monitoring for, I believe, 15 minutes without any CPU activity or disk activity before it does a restore. If it doesn't see that, it will do a snapshot every 24 hours. It will only back up certain files. In fact, there's a key that determines what it does back up, so it doesn't use whatsoever in any way, form, or matter the VSS.
So what's Shadow Copy backing up? If you turn off System Restore, what things is it choosing to?
Volume Shadow Copy would actually select around, you can set it up for any size of data. Let's go into one of the
Oh, but by default, is it actually backing up anything if you turn off System Restore?
Yes.
But what by default, what is it backing up?
Any file change that you do to a file in your system profile, in your documents and in the C drive. In fact, let's say here I have
Well, I thought that was the point of System Restore, though.
No, System Restore saves specific types of data. Certain registry types, certain folders, and certain file types on your system. The System Restore is very specific of what it saves. Volume Shadow Copy is just blanket completely the entire drive and monitor changes on the drive.
So if I deleted like a video off of my desktop, not saying what that video has in it, I'm just saying that I deleted a video off my desktop, is it still someplace on the drive as Shadow Copy?
Yeah.
Even if I, zeroed out.
When you delete it, when you delete that file, you make a change. Those bits that you change is what gets backed up until it runs out of space and then gets deleted and replaced by other data.
Okay.
So it has a finite amount of data that is backing up. In fact, here I am. I'm called VSS admin.
But it's only at scheduled times, right?
The System Restore, not all child service.
That's constant?
Yes. If I go here, I can, let's say, list the volumes. I have permissions to run this assignment.
Huh. I did list shadows on mine and I don't see anything. That's the reason.
If you're running XP or 2003, it's disabled by default. You have to enable all child copies.
Oh, I have 2007.
2007, Windows 7?
Windows, that! Brain fart. Yes, Windows 7.
Yeah, that's enabled by default.
It's not, I do.
On certain folders and drives, it is enabled by default.
Okay. But what if you do a list and list shadows and it doesn't show anything at all?
That means it hasn't backed up anything, probably. Several tools tend to disable it, especially any tool that's I/O intensive. Let's say video editors, probably your capture software is probably disabling that.
VMware?
VMware also disables it due to restrict the amount of I/O that it generates.
Okay.
Does it run in that same method on servers? Like,
Yes. In fact, if you look at tools like Veritas, Data Protector, if you look even at the VMware tools or the Microsoft Restore tools, all of them use VSS to do, when they go to a file and the file is being used, what they'll do is they'll do a snapshot of that file and they'll do a backup of that snapshot so they won't have conflict with the file being open.
so what's the point of scheduling shadow copies if it's doing it in real time too?
I don't see, in fact, you only schedule for backup.
You know,
And backup automatically goes and creates it at the moment. When it finds a file that is locked or open. In fact, many times when I've seen it is that they use it for, let's say, I always try to make sure there's a little in my documents, because many times, as you can see, I'm not very good at typing with one hand and paying attention and do 3-4 things. Sadly, I'm not a woman. I cannot multitask. I do have to give praise to women for that. They do know how to multitask. We don't. From time to time, I'll delete a file or make a change and save it and go like, oh, crap. Make the change you have done and just go back in, see, get the latest version, the last version, because it will not save versions. So only change the last change you did to that file.
So you're not going to have versioning and it only
Doesn't have versioning.
Okay. I was wondering if this is a potential way I can recover that Word doc when my boss loses it.
Yes.
Assuming none of my other software turns
In,
off.
in fact, what I'll do is I'll send you a link to the MSDN
Thank you.
article that covers everything about VSS, and that way, and I'll put it in the notes of my presentation also, so everybody can go there and read about VSS and how it works.
One other question. You mentioned something about all the treasure trove of information you can pull out of logs. Have you ever gone through logs looking for bad login attempts that look like someone's password
before me.
rule? Was that?
So
Well,
somebody was trying before me.
Well, or people who, if you have a rough idea of what the people's password policy is, you look through for failed login attempts and look for things that look like people logged in with a password as a username, and then the very next successful login thereafter is actually their real username.
Yeah. In fact, believe it or not, we have been using. I almost Bob has
Bob
been using
Swim.
it a lot.
Someone who is not me.
Yeah, for the last couple of years, Bob has used it a lot, mining email bots. Another thing that Bob has done is that he has gone to system restores and gotten copies of the email logs from there, Windows XP systems, and gotten data out of those. And even though, also from SAM hives, when you add a user or delete a user, even though Microsoft says that it doesn't back up the SAM hive, it does. They say they don't, but you'll find it in there. And you only find a differential of that account that you changed.
You know of a good tool for, a while back I wrote something for XP for automatically trying to grab those failed login attempts and try to correlate them with the
Shocked here.
okay? You try to correlate them with the password attempt, you know, where they type the password into the username field. But the tool broke when they put out Vista because the log style is different. Do you know any good tools out there already made that are good for, like, you know, harvesting stuff from the event log?
PowerShell.
Okay. Any specific scripts for PowerShell for doing that?
Do check or contact Tim Moody.
Tim Moody?
Yeah, he's the one that does the blog post on Shell with Ed Scotus and Paul Hammerman, I think, from SANS. He's the one that does everything in PowerShell for that one. Also, you can do WMI to create. If you go into Microsoft.com and if you search for scripting center, you will find examples on how to retrieve data from the event log. You will find PowerShell, BBS. You will even find Python code on how to do it or WinTeddy. on how to retrieve that data and parse it to Python. Any other question? Okay then.